Hi, it's Stephanie. Welcome to AGELESS. I'm so glad you're here. You'll get to meet a friend of mine who will share her story. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. I had the pleasure of speaking with a wonderful lady that I've known most of my life, Hervette Days. Hi, Mrs. Days.
Hello, Stephanie.
May I call you Hervette?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Bow me. Yes.
Well, I know you are a big traveler and wondered if you had any special plans for the summer.
No, not too much. I might go to Boston. I would love to go to Boston to visit there again. I really enjoy going to Cape Cod.
Since you're going to or thinking about going to Cape Cod, I know they are big fish eaters up there.
Yes.
Do you have a special type of fish that you like?
No, usually salmon is what I mostly eat. Yes. I don't really do the lobster and the crab and all that anymore. I just kind of narrowed it all the way down to grilled salmon. I remember once we went on a cruise, and every time we had dinner, I always ordered the salmon. And so the gentleman said, "Oh, could you please order something else?" So let me just try and put another dish on, and then you can try that. I said, "Well, you may, but I really would like to just to stick with the salmon if you don't mind."
How it was growing up, what it was like going to school, college, and maybe even how you met Mr. Days.
Okay, well, growing up, we lived in the Delta, and we lived on a farm. I was just exposed to just about everything, all kinds of animals and plants and different ways of life and farm equipments. And I just, was immersed in the earth, as to say. My father, he was, I would call him a hunter because he trapped. He was a trapper, I would say, because he trapped for minks. And so he would get the minks and prepare them for selling. And that was his trade that he loved doing that. So I learned a lot about the fur industry coming up, as a child. In some area, depending upon how far you live from the schoolhouse, we had to walk. So walking to school was part of our daily, I guess, activity, going to school and coming back. If it was raining, bad weather, anything like that, we would have transportation. But mostly we lived close enough to the school for a house that we could just walk to school. And that made it nice because you were walking with a group of other kids as you go down the road and talk, and you can interact with and just have fun before you get to the schoolhouse to go in and sit down and study all day. My father would raise an orchard, a peach orchard, and we would love to wait. Some of the trees would ripen earlier, and we would just go out and climb up in the tree. If I would get up there, get up at the top of the tree, and nobody else could come up into the tree but me, and I decide who would get what. I might pull a peach and drop it down to my sisters if they were nice to me. Well, it was fun as to who would be able to get in the tree first to, be the captain of the tree for the day. But it was things like that and apple trees, everything, and strawberries. I just love fruit, and flowers are my favorite. I just love the flowers in the yard and gardening those. So growing up on a farm was fun. And high school was invigorating. It was wonderful. It was a small school, not very, let me see, I guess the population may have been about 2,000 maybe in the area. And so you had different high schools. So the one I went to was relatively small populated. And so that made everything quite intimate, with the teachers and then with each other as students. And then when I went to college, it was in my local community, hometown. So I wasn't anywhere that I had to readjust my lifestyle at all because just about everybody in that community was going to the same college as well. And so you get a chance to meet other people. When I was in high school, I really loved playing basketball. That was my thing, to play basketball. And I was pretty good at it.
Oh,
I wasn't a Michael Jordan or anything like that, but I was good. And when I got to college, my one thing I was going to do, I was focused on is joining the basketball team. But the same year I got there, they stopped having the women basketball, and I was just
oh,
so oh yeah, I was so disappointed that I didn't get a chance to continue on the college level.
wow.
But yes, but, but that was disappointing at the very beginning. But I made amends to that and went on to something else. So, but college life was good.
So
Yeah.
did you meet Mr. Days in college?
No, my sister, I had two sisters that lived here in St. Louis. One of them went to high school here in St. Louis. And so she lived down the street from the Days family. And so when I would visit her, that's when I met him, not in school. He just saw me on the street coming into her house and going back and forth. And that's how we met.
Really?
Yeah. He
That's
just wanted to know who is she? I wasn't saying who is he though. But yes, we met because of my sister lived about 2 or 3 doors down the street from his aunt's house.
when we were kids, my mom and dad would always tell us stories. Well, we had to walk 2 miles to get to school in the snow.
Right.
Did your folks ever say stuff like that to you?
Yes. And that really happened here in St. Louis, Stephanie. I remember riding the bus from Lee and Kossuth downtown, to work. And when I got off the bus, I had to walk across this field, which was almost knee-deep snow, just to get to work, to the school.
Okay.
And it was terrible. I didn't have that in the South because it didn't snow that much there. It may snow like every 5 or 6 years. And when we got snow, that was wonderful. Yes, we didn't have really bad weather at all. The ice and the snow that you had in the other part of the country. And I didn't like, driving in the street, the neighborhood, and especially on the highway. I avoided the highway as much as I could because it just seemed I wasn't accustomed to so much traffic going back and forth and at the speed. So I was real reluctant to get on the highway for a good while until I really learned the city. And I would I preferred just driving on the side streets to get to where I was going. But that eventually changed because you went to get where you was going faster.
Mhm. Now, is it true that you have a nickname, Roadrunner?
Uh, well, I nicknamed my friend that. And so she just turned it around and put it on me because we both went. I think she went a little more than I did. And I would tell her, I say, you're at home. Every time I call you, you're gone. She said, well, you're not at home either. So I nicknamed her Roadrunner.
I knew it somewhere somebody had that nickname. So,
Right.
so Roadrunner 1 and 2.
Yes, I named her Roadrunner 1, so I'm Roadrunner number 2.
Neither one of you all are at home.
No, I tell you, I know that's true. But it was so fun. And it was so surprising that I was I don't know, I think it was in Florida. And I looked across on this parking lot, and that was a sign that says Roadrunner. It was up on the building. And I said, oh, I have to take a photo of this. So I went over and took a photo of it so I could give it to Adele. I said, this is you. I will put her picture right underneath of it. I'm always so grateful for the places that I've lived because of the people that I meet, and they bring so much richness to my life. And, it was just great because when I moved from Mississippi to St. Louis, there was adjustment, and I embraced that. And so and my brother was in the area. So we all was there. And I had been visiting in the churches I had been going to. So it wasn't much to adjust to. But it was good. And then when I moved to Washington, DC area, I actually lived in Silver Spring. It was very good. The neighbors were very kind. I thought I would never ever use a map because I never had to have a map to go into place, especially when I went to Maryland, I had to get a map and read it and it map out every place I was going to go. I had to map it out because I wasn't taking a cab. I had to find out how do I get here. And then once I find out how I get there, I want to know, well, how do I go this way? What's the alternative route? And so after a while, I think I knew the state and the city very well. I
Yeah.
could go wherever I wanted to go, it was amazing. When you're young, you are daring. You can do those things. When I was at church and we were in Sunday school and we had this convention, Sunday school convention down in Memphis, Tennessee.
Mhm.
And so they wanted someone to go down to visit, to go to the convention. And Robin and Karen were selected as the two young ladies. And they was about, I guess, 13 or 12, something like that. They was young. And here I am driving two young ladies all the way from St. Louis to Memphis, Tennessee. I did, by ourselves. And I always would tell Adele, I said, you and your husband, Levert, must have had a lot of faith in me. You're going to let me drive your child all the way to Memphis, Tennessee with just one adult there too. And we stayed there for a week. And I would get up every morning. We would go to the convention drive and we just was all over the place. And I had Robin as a navigator.
No.
Right, so you have to read the direction when we get into the city of Memphis so we can know where we go. And the Lord just blessed us. And I was thinking, what was I thinking? I say, but most of all, importantly, they trusted me with that child.
Mhm.
And I thought that was the most beautiful thing in the world for someone to value you that much, to trust that you would be careful with their lives and that you would take them places, let them enjoy it, get enriched, and then bring them back home to them, and that safety factor that has never left my mind. I always revert back to that and think about that and how gracious they were. And then their children were also very independent. they they were their minds were active, they were intelligent, and they were discerning, they could understand. And so it wasn't so much of me but them also, the intelligence and the training that they had at home and that helped them navigate. I will forget that experience.
There was a mutual connection between the three of you
Yeah.
because you were there as their guardian and they were there to trust you. But at
Yeah.
the same time, you were learning things from them and about
Yes.
them.
Yes.
And they were learning things about you as well. And so
Yeah.
I just know from the things that I've heard, you have instilled so many positive things in my family, my siblings. And so I want to thank you for the person that you have been to us and how you've demonstrated so many wonderful characters to us that, we could just pick up and go because you have been a positive force. And so I'm going to turn the corner a little bit and ask you, why did you choose to be an educator?
In the beginning, I really didn't focus on becoming an educator. My oldest brother, was an educator, was a principal. My cousin was a high school teacher. He taught me in high school history, and I was saying, "Oh, no way! I'm not going to go into education." At that part, my greatest desire as a kid when I was growing up was to be a missionary. That's really, I wanted to be a missionary. And I didn't, we have Bible school, BTU, Baptist Training Union classes. And I love Sunday school. We had great Sunday school teachers. And I just loved it. And always, for some reason, we would study about missionaries. I just wanted to be a missionary. But then as time went on, I decided when I went to college, I said, well, then I went to be a nurse, RN, because my focus still was on helping people and doing things like that. And so I did work one summer while I was out of college during the summer. I worked as a nurse aide at Barnes Hospital. And I think that's when I decided that I probably don't want to be in the medical area, because I found myself sympathizing and empathizing with the patients. I just, they just became part of me. And it was just, kind of much at that tender age that when I was doing the aide training. Well, I wasn't training, it's just a job for the summer. I just worked as a nurse aide. And I remember in the hospital, there was one lady who had amputation of one of her legs. And she would often talk to me, and she would tell me how painful it was and how she was hurting. And so one day when we was talking, I was on my job, and she's asked me to pray for her. And it started, well, that part didn't start me that much, but when and I told her, yes, I would. And then she said, well, you pray out aloud. Now that's when it hit, home. And I was saying, no one had ever asked me to pray for them aloud so they could hear. She wanted to hear me praying for her, which I did. But to this day, I really don't know what I said. But God just took over, and whatever words came out, it was directed, I believe, by the Holy Spirit, and just helped her. And I just always was thankful and that she thought enough to ask me to pray for her, and that my prayer would somehow avail and help her. And so, that was the one thing. And I would come home and I would, think about the patients all the time. And I said, well, maybe I can be a missionary in a different way. I would just go into education. I would work with the kids and teach school. I was always a teacher growing up, in Sunday school. We would have Sunday school classes, and we would have to learn all the verses and teach this. And I was a secretary and I always went to the conventions, and, so I was always working with kids. And even though I was kind of a kid at the time, but it became a passion. I love children. I love working with them. And I also remember we would have plays at school when I was in the grade school. And we always had a play, we would learn and perform all the time. And I enjoyed all that. And then teaching each other, we took turns, a lot of us. My mom, I was the 10th child in my of 12. So I'm way down the line. But I had all these teachers before me, and everybody was teaching and telling you how to do things and do this and do that. And so, but it was all fun. And I guess I just kind of joined the rank because my baby sister, she decided to go into teaching herself. She was a biology teacher in high school in Chicago. So it just became a part of my fabric of my life, just being with people and with children and seeing them learn.
Do you still find times to use your gift of teaching, and how do you do that?
Yes. Well, I've never stopped teaching in Sunday school at church, Bible classes. We have Bible class, and I taught, I would team teach with her. That was a missionary. And she asked me if I would team teach with this adult Sunday school class with her. And I did for like 6 months out of the year. I would team teach, and then she would teach. I also, with BSF, I had been going to classes there, and I was asked to do a class there, but I refrained from doing that because I had a lot of other things going on at my church that I was involved in. And so I was very busy. What I did do after I retired, I did volunteer for 3 years in the St. Louis public school system with the Mentor St. Louis program. So I did that for about 3 years, and then I decided that I would not do that. I would go to school. So I went to interior design school for a year because I wanted to.
Hidden talents. I knew you had hidden talents. I knew it.
I wanted to enhance my ability to sew and decorate and all this because it's so relaxing. When I would come home from work, one of the things, first thing I would do was go to my sewing room. And I would just sit down at my sewing machine and I would sew. And that was one of the ways I relaxed myself from the tension of the day, just by sewing. And it would take maybe 15 minutes. And it didn't take long. I never got into knitting though, but sewing and decorating is one of my favorite things to do.
Do you believe that you can always learn something from someone, no matter their age?
Oh, sure. I was looking at a video yesterday. My niece sent me a video of her granddaughter, who is about 11 months old. And so she is learning how to walk. And I was thinking about it because when she was walking along the side of the sofa, she was moving confidently, across because she had support. She knew that if she held on to that sofa, she was not going to fall. But then her grandmother started talking to her and beckoning towards her and encouraging her to, no, you can do this. Come on to Nana, come this way. And so she put her trust in her grandmother. She let go of the sofa and then she started walking towards her and she kept saying, encouraging her, come, come. And she made a little wobble and she was going to sit down. She said, no, don't sit, come. And so she stood back up and I was just lying in bed and I was thinking about that video, how we hold on, sometimes have a crutch that we hold on to and we're afraid to let go. But if you have someone out there encouraging you to come, you can't make that step. You can move forward. And I was thinking about her making that leap of faith. And that's what it was. She had faith that her grandmother would be there. And if she was going to fall off, she would be there to pick her up and comfort her. You can just learn from little things like that, how this little child was able to trust and believe. And we as adults sometimes find it very difficult to put that leap of faith. And that just kind of stirred me. So I need to remember that so I can trust and be faith, But I think you can learn from anyone. Everybody has self-worth, everybody. Yes. And so you can learn from all you have to do is be open, to what is going on. And always remember, you don't have all the answers. You learn every day from everybody, all the time, from nature. You're just sitting there watching the birds. Every morning, I have my window raised a little, and this tree, I have a tree right in front of the window. And the birds just love to come in and sit in this dogwood tree. And they chirping early in the morning, 4 o'clock. I gotta let the window down. And then I listen for sounds, the same sounds that what is making. And it's just wonderful. And it just makes you think, even they are happy. Even they are calling out to some other bird around them and saying, hey, I'm here. It is okay to come if you want to. It's a safe zone, And so you even learn from nature. Everything, I think, it's a learning process. It never stops.
Right.
You're forever infusing things.
Wow, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Who are some of the women in your life that have positively shaped you? And I'd like for you to start with people in your life when you were younger, like your mom and your sisters.
Oh, yeah, definitely. My sister, my mom. She was a very kind and gracious lady. She always wanted to help others. She always put herself last. She wanted others to be happy. And she just wanted her children to be free, to think, to love. And most importantly, she wanted us to love God. Like I wanted my kids. I would tell them all the time, no matter what happens in life to you, never give up hope. Never stop trusting in God. Never, because that is your lifeline. God is. And if you have God in your life, you can weather the storms. You can make it. You can achieve. You can be successful. You can be a great citizen. And that's what they taught us, good work habits. You need to go to school. You need to be honest. You need to be truthful. You need to be loyal, to let your word be your bond. Don't just say things to be saying them. If you don't mean it, don't say it. And it was just a lot of common sense knowledge and from life experience that she wanted to instill in us as we are growing up, just to be at the center of love and give as much of it as you can and let it be freely given. And don't try to buy anything. You can't buy friendship. It either come, I would tell my kid all the time, it has to be genuine. And if you have to buy it, you don't need it. It's not worth it. You're going to find yourself constantly trying to please be yourself, believe in yourself, have self-esteem. You are, somebody. You're a child of God first. So you are definitely somebody. But, and my father will always tell us that too, it's nice to be important, but it's more important to be nice. He will always say, don't go around with your head up in the air. Love people, be kind and respectful to them.
I want to take a minute just to thank you, as I said, for the bond that you built with my mom. She talks about you all the time, and I know that you've talked to her every day, several times a day.
Right. Yeah, if I ever talk, she would say, don't call me tonight, just talk to your sisters.
I appreciate you for enveloping her into your life and the lives of your sisters, because that's meant so much to her.
Yes.
Yeah.
She knows them and they know her.
Are there any other women in your life that have made a mark that's made you or shaped you into the person that you are today?
When I was growing up at Sunday school, we had I remember Miss Mabel Armour was our Sunday school teacher. She made sure that we learned Bible verses every Sunday. Before you place your money in the plate, when they would take up the offering, you had to give a Bible verse. And then later, as we grew, we learned the meaning, behind them. So that really encouraged me, because a lot of times when you would get distraught, you have down and depressed or something, not feeling good, you think of those verses and you can go back and say, oh, this is what God is, a promise keeper. He said he would never leave you. I remember how I used to just say the 23rd Psalm at night time. If I became afraid, I would just say it until I fall asleep. The Sunday school teachers played a big role in my life, and I had really good teachers. I liked all my teachers in high school and in college, especially when I was going to graduate school here in St. Louis. That was one professor. He would always say, well, I say labels are for jelly jars, bar jars and stuff. It's not for people. We shouldn't label people. We should see people as they are and not put a label on them. And he really went out of his way to, in graduate school, you have a huge number of kids in a class. But what he would do, he would break it down into like 15 to 20 kids. And he would take all of us out to breakfast. He did this with his entire class. So we would sit around this big table and we would just talk to him and he talked with us. He wanted to know who his students were. How are you today? What are you doing? What's happening in your life that I can help you with? And I thought that was one of the nicest things that he took the time to divide us and to bring us in groups where he could come close to us and we could come close to him. He wasn't just a teacher standing down there lecturing for an hour and a half, and you sitting out here in the audience, taking notes the whole time and don't have a conversation with him. And I just thought that was really outstanding. When you do things, you don't do it for people, that only for people that you love and you expect this. You don't expect anything in return.
Right.
You do it because you want to do it. It's coming from the heart. And if it's not in your heart to do it, then you should not do it, because then you're being dishonest with yourself. What I do it because I want to do it. I feel good about doing it, and it's coming from the heart. When the Shakespeare plays, it says, to thine own self be true. And, and I always think if you tell the truth, you won't have to remember what you said. If you lie about everything, you're going to have to, what did I say? But just tell the truth. And if you don't want to tell the truth, just be quiet.
Yes. Was age a factor in who shared with you? Did it make you feel uncomfortable if they were younger than you were?
Oh no, I have friends at all levels. I have, young kids that would call me all the time, and the parents would say, "Boy, you better stop calling that lady. How she married, man? She is married, and her husband may answer that phone, and. But they would call, and it's so much you can learn from children because they are just so innocent. They're so free, and they don't have all this baggage. They don't have these masks that they wear. They are just open, and there's so much that you can just look at them and get from them, and the happiness they bring, the things they laugh at, things they play with, and the joy that they get from those things. And I think, and then I have friends my age, and I've had friends 20, 25 years older than mine. And we were really friends. We were, do things together. And I have some of the young ladies would say to me now, when my mother and you were friends, and I just thank you for the friendship you had with her, even though that was like 20, 22-year age difference. But it didn't matter about the age. I had a mother, a father, and their three children. One's like 20, one's about 16, others about 13. They just had them over for pizza and chicken wings and stuff, and they are young. And so just associating with them brings so much wealth to your life, and warmth, and it keeps you ageless. My husband would say, well, we should keep kids around us all the time so we will be young. I said, well, then why do you always go upstairs about 20 minutes afterwards? I said, but keeping up with a 2-year-old, well, that's keeping you young. That's when I think about being ageless, when you're a 2-year-old now.
You just gave us a little definition of ageless. Now, if I said to you, you are simply ageless, how would that make you feel?
Well, it wouldn't encourage you to get up off the sofa, more often. It encourage you to get on the treadmill. I might say, well, I don't think I do it today. When mom said, oh, you should, go on. It's going to do you some good. And so, you feel the pain of growing older, but, you can still be excited about living. Because what I do, I walk, I get on my treadmill, and I will walk 30 minutes a day. I would go up and down the stairs. Oh, I don't know how many times a day I go up and down stairs. I take water aerobics. I really love going swimming water aerobics 3 times a week with an instructor. And, I sew, I write. I'm always doing something, busy with something, going out with the flowers and the garden. So I think it's what you make it. And most people always say, well, age is just a number. It's what you make of the number. You can be vibrant. You can do the same thing. You just have to take longer to go up the stairs. That's all.
So I got one last question. I know that you're a great cook.
Oh.
So if you were a spice, what spice would you be? And how would your spice be sprinkled on other women to encourage them to connect and become friends with you, and then take that sprinkle and sprinkle it on somebody else?
Well, vanilla flavor is one of my favorite cooking flavors that I like to use. I like vanilla flavor, and I like garlic salt. Okay. I like spice pepper. And my pepper and the garlic salt, I really do like and I like the vanilla flavor. I know when I'm baking cakes or cookies or anything, they always say you can have rum, you can have almond flavor, you can do vanilla, you can do vanilla and almond together. But I never like putting those combinations together. I just like the vanilla by itself. But I think it's so tell us something about you, how you can spread joy through the things that you do, especially, the foods that you prepare. I think food just is a bonding thing. It brings people together. When I think about eating, you think about just spreading joy with what you do, and just adding a little bit of spice and flavor to that. It just multiplies, and it makes the person, just feel good inside. And you can use these time that you put into preparation of whatever you're going to do, and especially in cooking, the time that you spend, it's like, I'm making this gravy, or I'm making this pudding with love, and I'm putting all of myself into it. All of my love is into this because I want it to satisfy the person that it's going to. I want them to sit back and enjoy it and be saying, oh, this is great. What did you do? How did you make this? And then you can begin to tell them all of this was just sprinkled with love. Everything that I put into this, I was sprinkled with love.
Oh, wow.
And a merry heart, it's good. It's good to be cheerful and to have a merry heart and spread joy. And so if I can spread just a little bit of spice in someone's life, to pep them up and make them feel good and enjoy what they receive, then that's a blessing in itself.
You said something that is so true. We sometimes forget to love ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't take a minute to put
Yes.
your arms around yourself,
Yes.
you kind of miss out on taking care of you.
Right.
And so it's hard to give to somebody else because you haven't filled up your love tank.
Right.
And you're so right. God is the one who gives us that extra that we need.
Yeah.
But we also need to remember it's okay to say, hey, Steph, I love you today.
Yeah, right. It's sort of like when you're at a party, a birthday party or an affair, and you go around, you take pictures of everybody else. And then when you're looking, get them developed, look at you, they would say, well, where are you? Weren't you there? You're not even in anything. You just left self out.
Yes.
So I have to remember, I'm gonna run over here and take a picture with somebody so I can be in it. And so often we get entangled in life like that. We put stuff on the shelf and forget that, we need the same thing that we are given.
Yes.
Yes. We need to receive as well.
Yeah. This has just been such a delight for me to just have the pleasure of speaking with you like this. I've never done this with you before. And I have learned so many things about you, especially the spice. I love that. One last thing, anything that you would like to leave?
We need to encourage ourselves, just be, and I think of myself as an encourager to others. I think I like to listen and offer advice when it's asked for, but my biggest thing, I'd like to encourage others. And I just think if we can learn to discern, just rely on our inner strength and rely on God to continue to give us what we need to embrace life, then we will be able to pass that light that we have of His word to others. Always have self-esteem. Think of yourself as being worthy. You are worthy because you're a child of God. No one is unworthy, but God is no respecter of person. No matter who you are, where you come from, what you've done, God still loves you. And just believe and trust God to be your guiding light, because man, of course, we fail a lot, but God never fails. And He will always be there to be our defender and our protector. And we can always rely on His promises because He never, ever breaks a promise. He said, I will be with you always, even until the end. And embrace life as God gives it to you.
This has just been such a joy. I can't even express it, what's going on in my heart. And I really appreciate everything that you shared. You've said some really important things to all of us. We do need to take care of ourselves. We need to connect. We need to focus on God because He is the one who gives us life. And you've shown us in your own life how you've done that. And so thank you for being transparent. And we'll have to do this again sometime too. I would love that. I would love that.
Okay. And next time I'll make your mother come over here.
We'll have to get her on.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, my friend. Thanks for joining me today on Ageless and for being an amazing part of this journey. Don't forget, you have been fearfully and wonderfully made. Go out today and live this life vibrantly. Until next time, bye for now.